All right, so let's keep on going. I'm going to start right up here where I've got that edge of where the nostril is. Then right below that area, I can fill that in. It's going to be quite a bit darker right there at the nostril edge. But then I lighten everything up as I move down away from there. And I want to come all the way over here to that septum. And then just to the left of where the Filtrum is. Good way to remember that is the septum is a separation between both these areas of the nostrils. And then the Filtrum is an area that is a divot. And so it can be filled Filtrum. Come over here. I'm going to lighten this up. It's going to be dark up here, lighter down here. So dark way up here. Why is that? Because the nose represents an area that sticks out away from the face, right? So as I move away from that area, then the quality of that shadow, quality of that cast light, or that cast shadow rather, that occurs from the nose starts to lose. It starts to wane in its intensity. And by the time I get down there to the lip, then that plane of the head starts to move out away, both cylindrically, in this curved fashion, but then it also is moving out away, much like, sloping, much like the length of the nose does. It slopes from here at the nasal bone all the way down to the base of the nose, comes out away from the face. Same thing is true with the upper lip, the mouth area right here, especially the upper lip. So I can come all the way down here, and it should be lighter right here than it is way back here, okay? We can learn a lot about the planes of the head and the shapes and what they do all of these features on the face just by studying and examining things in the shadows. Because it's hard to learn something when I'm looking out here where it's all just lit up, right? Doesn't tell me anything about the form, does it? So I can study and learn more about the form. And so therefore, as an artist, I can depict more definition and show more form in the shadow. Okay. The drawback in shadows is we don't have as much clarity in shadows. So let me do this. Let me make sure I don't lose that little part of the nose. I want to make sure I keep that. Move on down just a little bit more. Now that this is my darkest spot right here because the nose comes back and attaches itself to the face. So it's going to be darker right there. But then I've got an area that curves right there. If I drew the contour lines right here, I would see in the zygomatic right there, this curve. It goes all the way up here in the zygomatic arch. So it's a lighter area. We can see that. It's a lighter area right there. So as I start to fill this in, I'm never just filling in a bunch of values without thinking about the contour and the curve, right? So I'm going to add some linear strokes here and keep filling this in and moving up towards the cheek. And now I'm going to change the position of my hand. Do that one more time. You can start over here. I don't want to get too far up into the cheek. It would be a different demo if we did that. come right back down here. Now I can start right over here next to that dark line, that dark shadow, and increase that as I move away from that edge. Increase it right there at the edge, but as I move away from the edge, I'll decrease the amount of pressure that I'm adding to the pencil. Now I'm using very, very, very light pressure right now. And the pencil is moving, or I'm sorry, the pencil is adhering to the paper quite easily because there's no pencil on the paper at all right now, right? So every time I put something down with this Caput Mortuum, it is adhering to the paper quite a bit. And there's a lot of pigment that is being added to the paper quite rapidly right now. So it's something, it's enjoyable. It's really great when you're starting out like that and you're getting a lot of pigment on the paper. But it also represents a time in the drawing where we want to think about all these shapes and all these values, right? So let me move my way down into the chin just a little bit here. We'll extend this just a little bit into the chin. Trying to keep this relegated to the mouth, but you know, it's kind of hard to do that when we've got these other areas that are just begging to be drawn. Come down in here. Add just a little bit of value here. And notice I've got, like, look at this little triangle right here. I've got a dark value right here. It was a line, right? Initially it was a line. But I'm drawing on that line and I'm indicating the line. So what am I drawing when I look at that particular spot? Am I drawing the chin or am I drawing the neck, you know? And I would submit to you that I'm drawing the neck. The dark area is the neck, right? So that's what I need to indicate now, is that this dark area is way back there where the neck is. Now the neck is always, 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 when we're talking about three-dimensionality and things like that, and volume and form and shape and sculpting, and that's what I try to think like a sculpturist as I'm working. But the neck is always going to be darker than just about everything else. Pupils might be darker than parts of the neck, but you can find little triangle areas often where the neck will be very dark. If the hand wasn't there right now, we'd have a little triangle up here where we're meeting the earlobe right there, or at least the corner of the little triangle right there that represents where we can't see any more of the side plane of the head, and so it would be very dark right in there. I'm going to indicate that dark area, and then as I move away from there, I am going to lighten up the pressure that I'm adding, that I'm applying to the tip of the pencil. Add just a little bit more right here. Not going to add everything. Not going to define this real well, but just adding a little bit of that shadow. All right, now let's go back up here and right in here, I'm going to make it slightly darker, right past where the septum is, and then top of the Filtrum. Now I can add a little more value right there inside the Filtrum because I've darkened everything up in the mouth on the left-hand side. And then right here in the middle, that area can be A little bit darker because it represents a small edge. And I want to move over here, indicate where the shadows are underneath this part of the base of the nose, that bottom plane of the nose that represents that area that is more flat and moving directly back towards the face. Put a little more value right there. Add just a little value right here in this part of the nose. That bottom plane of the nose is going to be, ultimately, will be shaded much darker. So I'll put a little bit of value in there just to indicate some of that. Okay. All right, so let's go back down here and add just a little more value right in there. I'm going to redefine this shape right here in the Filtrum. Now I can come over into the lighter side of the mouth. Very light pressure. Extremely light pressure. Oh, even though, it's mostly within the lights of the face, and indicate the darkest area over here. Even though it's light over here, it's a light part of the subject, light part of the face. I still want to add just a little bit of value over here. Still want to put that in there. I don't want it to be white. That would just mess up everything if that were entirely white over there. I don't want white parts in the face, just like I don't want black in the face, right? If I'm going to have any black at all, it's probably going to be the pupil. The pupils can be maybe black, right? But what happens when I just add black somewhere, or I just add white? Well, it makes it to where I can't show any contour and any kind of movement in the form. And so that represents, to me, that represents a disaster because I want to show a three-dimensional curve and feel of the form. And I want to think about this as though I'm sculpting the subject, right? Okay, now we've got two pillars in the bottom part of the lips of the mouth. So there's one right here, and there's one over here. So they kind of like, think of like a pillar that holds something up. It's holding up this part of the lips, okay? And so they're a little bit lighter in value. So that means that I can shade right over here and just add just a slight amount of shading over here. It kind of supports where that pillar is, okay? Same thing right over here. I can add more shading. And I think you can see that right here. So this would be the pillar, kind of right in there, okay? It's not exactly vertical. So we have to use our imagination a little bit. But I can do that over here and just start adding just a little more value right here. A little more value. then that creates more shading that I need ultimately to create a curvature down here for the bottom of the chin and the jawline. Okay. So I'm going to come right up here, add more value right there. Even though the majority of the dark value is going to be right there next to the hand. There's a little bit of value on the other side. Not a lot. And then right here where we have an indistinct edge often, right here where the jawline is. And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and just add a couple of marks that indicate where that neck is, those neck muscles as they move out away from the head to help support the head. Indicate that top edge of the sweater. And let's put just a little bit of information right in there, not a lot. We don't have time to, in this demo, to show some of those large neck muscles and what they do, but just indicating sort of where they are right there. Okay, now let's go ahead, move our pencil in a different direction here so that we can show a little bit of a smoother transition. If I just move my pencil in one direction, then I'm going to end up seeing a whole bunch of pencil strokes. But there's something that I haven't told you yet that we're going to do with this Polychromos pencil. The reason why we use a Polychromos pencil is because it's very fluid. It's a very fluid medium. And so we can use a paintbrush on that. So that's what I'm going to show you next. All right. So I'm going to use this particular paintbrush. It's a soft brush. This is a Scepter Gold 2, a synthetic, sable brush by Winsor & Newton. It's a flat. And it works really well. The ones that I enjoy those. I think this one works really well. But the ones I like are, generally speaking, more soft at this point in the drawing process. I also like this particular paintbrush, a Royal & Langnickel brush. It is the Z83SC. It's a little tighter bristles and a little slightly stiffer. But this early on, I don't want to damage the paper, and so I'm going to use a soft brush. And the first thing I can do is I can start sort of over here in the lighter areas and move it around, and you'll see that I'm getting some of the pigment to rub off in some weird ways a little bit, and that's okay. We can come back and fix that later, okay? Okay, so now I'll come right in here, right in here. Got a little bit of pigment that is building up on this brush. Might as well just hit it down here as well. Now let's just move into the dark areas. Okay. So I am filling in the tooth of the paper with the pigment that I already put down. That's one thing that this does. Another thing that it does is it gets rid of some of those irregularities in the pencil strokes. So some of those details that we don't want or need, now they're gone. For the most part, they're gone. So that's a great thing. All right. But it did take away some of the detail that we want and maybe added its own detail. Sometimes that happens. So I want to come back in there and just sort of redefine some things, look at some of these shapes a little bit more, and kind of redefine where things are so that I understand what's going on with my line drawing, right? And I'm gonna add that top edge of the top lip for now. Again, I don't need that to be extremely distinct and separate from the rest of the lips. That top edge I'm talking about, I don't need a line that represents the edge of the lips as we move into the rest of the mouth. But sometimes you'll want it for a little while just to remind yourself of where that edge happens to be. So that's what I'm doing there. So I'm going to sharpen up a couple of my pencils again. And now, let's see, I want to keep evaluating where these edges are. I'm going to just add a little more information back in there so that I don't lose the value structure, for one, and I also don't lose where those boundary marks are. Those become important. All right. Add some darker hash marks down here really quickly so I kind of know a little bit more about where that chin is. Okay. And over here, reestablish a little more about the corner of the mouth. Remember, the corner of the mouth can always, always, always be darker than anything else on the mouth. Corners are just that way, aren't they? Corners can usually be darker, indicate where that nostril edge is. I don't want a circle indicate where the top edge of a nostril is. Never want to do that. But what I do want is just a darker edge to understand where it begins. Okay. Redefine that edge just barely. I don't need a lot over there. And then part of the area where the nasolabial fold would be. And same thing over here. I can increase that value over there just slightly. It's not wrong to use an eraser a little bit if you want to do that. I'm laughing at myself. Nothing's wrong. I don't know why I use that word, but you know what I mean. You can sort of indicate some of these things with an eraser, and that helps from time to time. Especially where the paper might start being a little disagreeable. Pastel Mat does that once in a while. Okay, make that darker down here. Then right up under the septum, where the septum is, I can make that darker. When most of the time, generally speaking, when I'm starting the Grisaille method, and if we were doing the entire face on this, it would work everywhere on this dark side of the face, right? Because that's the darkest spot in the entire portrait, right? That's what I would concern myself with most right now. But when I'm doing this and I start to evaluate a passage, like I'm looking right in here and I start to think about it a little bit more, and I think, you know what? I need to grab the eraser because this spot over here is not light enough. 99% of the time, all it really means, though, is that that area isn't too dark, but an area next to it is not dark enough, because we're judging everything against the white of the paper right now, right? We don't know we're doing that, right? Our mind does that. The optical nerve, as it's seeing, this information, it's bouncing back this white, and it's saying to our brain, oh, that is extremely dark, but we know it's not really dark, right? Because we don't have anything else on the surface right now. So I'll just brush that just a little right there. Okay. These areas, so what is the reason to use an eraser at this point? It's not because we think something is too dark, right? But it's because it starts to break down the hierarchy of the values for the moment. In other words, it starts to make us think that an area is getting darker than it really is. And so it breaks the hierarchy. It breaks that system where we're going to say this is a 10, right? That value is a 10. This value right up here on the nose would be, a 1, right? That would be a white, right? So if you're going from white of the paper, or nearly white of the paper being a 1, black being a 10, then we're gonna fudge it just a minute and just say that's kind of like a 10, right? It's not really, but what would it be? Maybe an 8, something like that. Maybe a 7. In both directions. Maybe over here it would be closer to a 7 or 8. In reality, and then over here probably be slightly lighter than that. Maybe even a 7.5 or 6, something like that. But that's what we want to do, is when we look at a passage and we say, oh my goodness, this is looking so dark over here. I'm going to have to correct that. I'm going to have to erase that right now. Then instead, what we really want to do is tell our mind, oh, you know what? That means then that something else, something right next to it, something adjacent to that, or something, a little bit away from there is not dark enough. So something starts to look like it's too dark, like right up here above that lip line, that outer lip line, that starts to look way too dark. I don't want to grab the eraser right now. Instead, I want to darken it up here, right under the nose, right? That's probably what my mind is really understanding, what is really being communicated, is I don't have it dark enough somewhere else. Okay. All right. I won't beat that point to death. Okay. Let's take a look now, evaluate that just a little bit, see what it's looking like and what we can do to improve it. So probably need just a little bit of information right up here. I don't want to make my subject older than she is. She's a teenager here, an older teenager, probably 17, something like that. I don't want to give her wrinkles or anything like that. But at the same time, I want it to represent my daughter. I want it to represent her. And so I want to pay attention to some of those subtleties in the form and in the skin. Okay. So there's this little spot right here that turns back just a little. Right in there. Turns up. It's an angle that is not straight. This part over here kind of moves up that way. And let's see, this spot right here. And then part of her hand is pushing up on that side of the mouth. So I'll work on that just a little. It's depressing that spot just a tiny bit. Eventually, I want to get rid of that lip line. And I want to make the lip line more obscure the more I continue to shade this and add value to it. And I'm going to add more value to the bottom of the lip, right underneath the lip line, because that will show more of the form and how that lip is jetting out away from the teeth, right? And let's just brush this really quick. Okay, there we go. All right, so next we are going to add some color. So our first little bit of color that we'll be putting on this particular portrait. Some of the colors that I will use, they'll also be similar to some of the colors we'll use in the face. So I'm going to use Anthraquinoid Pink 571 in Luminance. That's what that one is. I'm going to use Polychromos Rose Carmine 124. I'm going to use another Polychromos Beige Red 132. And I'm going to use another Luminance pencil. And that is Anthraquinone Carmine, which is 580. Now, those may not be the only pencils that we use in the lips, but those are some good preliminary pencils to use. Oh, yeah, and Pink White. That's another great one in Luminance. That one is 581 Pink White. So, and Pink White can establish some of the texture and some of the highlights. So I could start with it, start right in here, showing some of that highlight right there on the lips. Then I can show a little bit of the texture. And a little bit more right there. I want to find opportunities to use curved mark making, curved areas, and more vertical areas on the top lip. The reason for that is that will help to create the illusion of texture and sort of working with the way that the contours of the lips, the texture of the lips, sort of flow anyway, so that that textural element that we see in the lips kind of helps us to understand the volume of the lips. Okay, I'm going to come back in there with that Anthraquinoid ink. Start to add a little bit of color here. We'll probably also use some orange in here as well. I just want to cover several areas here. Sharpen that tip. Just cover a lot of this with this particular pink. It's a great pink. It's a pink that we've had for a long, long time in Luminance. It's a very tried and true pink color that works really well in skin tone and in lips in particular. Oh, I like it. Okay, so now got that just about everywhere. Gives us a little bit of color in there. All right, we'll lay that one aside, and I'm going to grab something very dark now. And this one is my Anthraquinone Carmine 580. And I want to look for some of the darkest spots in the lips. Darkest areas. Where are those? So obviously that dark line that we've had for so long now is one area that is dark. I want to indicate that. And I want to create a little bit of a contour with it, both the top and the bottom. This is where the true power of the Grisaille method starts to be realized. Is now I can just add color on top of everything else that I've got on my surface. And voila, I have got an instant success with the values as well. So I thought more about the lights and the darks from the beginning, right? Okay, now that's all very, very dark. And I'm going to come in here with my Rose Carmine. And I'm switching back over from a wax base in Luminance to Polychromos. So Polychromos, much more fluid. Come right in here, add these contour strokes in here, and think about the growth of the lips, how the texture of the lips is communicated when I'm using more vertical and curved lines. Put some of this. I don't want to put just one color in one part of the lips and ignore, if I put it in the bottom lip, then I want to make sure I put it in the top lip and vice versa. So these are going to look very, very bright for the moment, which is okay. It's fine. So go ahead and add just a little information over here. Okay. And then I'm going to add this lighter pink, the beige red that we talked about earlier. And I may make this, a little bit brighter right now than what I need to, just because I'm working against white of the paper, right? So I can always darken this up and modify the color and all of that good stuff. as I keep progressing on the portrait and I keep adding more skin tone. I don't even have skin tone in here right now. So I'll want to keep modifying this as I work on it. The top edge line of the lips needs to be a little more obscure. I don't want it to be a hard edge up there eventually. Okay, so that should be enough for the moment. Now, I want to go ahead and add some colors in the skin tone. Well, I did say that I would probably put a little bit of orange. You know what? Let's hold off on that orange in the lips. So let me put a little bit of the skin tone around here. So I'm going to use Butternut 542 in Luminance. So you might notice I'm switching over now to more wax-based pencils. That's going to help me quite a bit with depicting some of these skin tones. But the reason for using the wax-based pencils is not because of the colors, but it's because of the properties of the wax-based pencils. They are sealing in all of that Polychromos, very fluid medium in Polychromos. Now they've got something more stable on the top end. Your pencil dulls quite quickly when you're using the pencil against the white of the paper. Okay, right in here, before I do that, I'm just going to take out just a little bit of that Polychromos there. Sharpen that up. Come back inside here. Just establishing some of this lighter yellow skin tone right now. I can be a little indiscriminate about how I apply it. Kind of put it in its place here. Just, block it in here. That's all I'm really wanting to do right now. Do the same thing up here. Actually, before I do that, and if I want something a little stronger, I'm going to use sticky putty and come in here and just remove just a small amount. There's still some of the Polychromos Caput Mortuum on the surface, but I can add a little more of this now on top, and it will seal in the layer of Polychromos underneath. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go right over here, cross the divide, go over there to this part of the Filtrum. Add that right on top. And here we go. Now, while we're up here, let's go ahead and just add just a small amount of this butternut right up here. The nose, on this part of the nose. Might as well, right? We've got it in our hand. We might as well use it in other areas that make a little bit of sense. Okay, I'm going to sharpen that up one more time. Okay, let's move right over here. This little part of the outside edge of where those muscles all collect and come together. Remember, we talked about it? That is going to reflect a little bit of light over there. Now let's keep moving that around, though, so that we have a balance of some of these colors. Put that right over here. Okay, I'm going to move into this shadow shape right here. A little bit more. Move right in here as well. Come into the lips right here. It's something that I usually always try to do. Um, you're always going to have a little bit of that skin color inside the lips. So anywhere you can put that in there, that's what I like to do. I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's do this. Let's add just a little bit right up here. Small amount. And gonna add a little bit right over here. Not a lot. Don't want to get away from our tutorial right here in the mouth. Okay, now I'm gonna grab not burnt ochre. Yeah, well, no, I want to use these three pencils. So I'm going to use Herculaneum Red. That's this one, which is 068. And I want to use burnt ochre 10%, 872. And I want to use hibiscus pink, which is 094. Okay. Now I'm going to come right in here. Now I allowed that to be a little darker maybe than what I wanted. Probably okay, but I'm just going to lighten it up just a little tiny bit. Okay. And come in there with hibiscus pink. Darken that up. While I've got this in my hand, I'm going to darken it right here. And that right on top. And let's see, there was something right in here. I wanted to put it right in there. Maybe a little bit right there, not much. Okay, now I'm going to grab my Herculaneum Red. Right inside here. Just change the temperature just a little bit, right on the edge, mostly of where that butternut color is. Okay, right here. I hope you can see how that you can start getting some of your colors established pretty early on. And normally, typically, we would take a little more time developing some of this, but hopefully you can see just how quick we can establish some of these colors. Okay. Now they all become just a little more dull than maybe what we wanted, right? We want them to be a little more vibrant, show a little more saturation and intensity in our color, okay? So that they match the intensity that we're showing in the lip area and the lips themselves. So, and there's ways to do that. I'm going to grab my burnt ochre 10% right now, though. I'm right inside here. Darken that up just a little and fade that over into where I started with that Herculaneum Red right there. And same thing right up here. We have a more natural looking gradient right there. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to grab my anthraquinone carmine. And let me see here. over here. Darken that up just a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to come right up here. The very, it's a very true red, very bright true red is what this is. Get that established there. And in the nose, you can always have a little more red in the nose. So that little edge of the nostril, both sides. And right here in the shadow. So even down here, I'm going to add more red. I'm right over here. Add a little more red right there. And down here, I think you can see some of that red in the skin tone. Hopefully you can see that with me. All right. So now on top of that, I've added wax-based pencils. They get a little granular. So now what I want to do is I want to add some Polychromos pencils on top of that. Okay. So we're going to grab some pinks, and that helps to sort of what I refer to as it kind of brushes the area. It brushes that wax-based pencil, pushes it into the tooth of the paper. All right. So we'll do that next. Finding areas that I've already used wax-based pencils. I press a little bit harder. I'm digging down into tooth a little bit more. Do the same thing right over here. Press a little bit harder. This pink comes right over here. I'm going to concern myself with this edge right here. Move out away from that edge. Make sure all of that is much brighter. I would rather go in a direction that is much more saturated, much more intense. And then in colored pencil anyway, I can dull that back down. I can use more muted colors to dull that back down. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my beige red in Polychromos. Oh, no, I'm not. Before I do that, I almost forgot. I'm going to brush this area. So we used Polychromos, and we've used a lot of Luminance as well. But we use Polychromos, and so we know how fluid Polychromos is, and it will move around on the surface. It's very fluid. It will blend together a little bit more, and that's what we want right now. Okay. Now I'm going to go on top of this with my beige red. Okay. I'm going to come right in here, establish some of the light areas. Move over here. And let's find that little edge right in here we had earlier. Reestablish it. Top edge of where that nostril is. And, we can start to lose some of those little particulars right there. I'm going to grab Warm Earth. Warm Earth 70%. Add just a small amount of this, especially though on the shadow side. And come back on this side with my red color. Add that right on top. And then this is where I can grab an orange. Let me see here. Grab an orange color. Grab, what is this one? Cornelian, which is 850. Don't need a lot of it, just a small amount. Put it right up here. I don't want to use it just in one spot, though. Start to make things look a little funny if I only use certain colors in one spot. Kind of move it around to several areas, but especially where the light is right next to an area where we're getting close to a core shadow, right? So, and that will be a little more logical to have orange right next to a sunburst kind of effect. That's the thing I'm thinking about in my mind. Okay, so that was Cornelian. Come back inside here with beige red. Move this right down here. Sort of establish a little bit more about that. Whoops, I grabbed the wrong color. Grab my Herculaneum red instead so that I can develop that little edge right there. And go back to my beige red. Don't really have time to develop the nose on this demo, but you know, one of those things where you can come in here though and sort of establish where the light value is right up there, using pink white to do that. There we go. Okay, let's go back to beige red. And I sort of want to discriminate here on determine where that darker value is. So if you have difficulty with that, again, you can switch back over to your posterized version. So there's the lightest spot, right? You can use that to make that determination if you wanted to. Now, you can also kind of fudge that a little bit, and you can say, no, I want the lightest spot to be right down here, if you wanted to. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so we need a more neutral color. Switch over to viscous pink. I want to put that down here. I'm going to have time to develop all of these colors, but I just want to sort of add a few of these in here. Okay, then I can go on top of that with a beige red. Posterized version tells me that the lightest area is probably right in there, but what I'm trying to tell you is that because of the way the planes of the head work, the shapes right in there, then we don't have to follow that, right? So I can use a white that is all used up here, and I can say that this area right next to the lip line, that could be my brightest area. I could even say this area right up here could be really bright, okay? So I can use white if I want to to do that. And that just, it helps to develop and clarify the contours of this form is what that'll do. And I can go right on top with beige red. I don't want that white to be too dominant. Go back and forth, keep pushing back and forth to establish something that is overlapping. We're getting a gradient going this way and then the other way, directional gradient here where it's starting to develop and become something that looks like a natural contour. Okay. So that's what we're trying to do, but show that sense of sunlight right here. Okay. Do that down here. So I can come back inside there. Let's see, I've got pink, white. I'll add just a little bit of that. That may not be quite bright. Yeah, it looks like it is. Add that right there. This is going to be the brightest spot right there. And then right here will be super bright on the lips. Then here, small bit right there. Okay, now where I want to really punch that up, I can add white if I want to. And right here, I could add just a little bit of white. And that just adds a little more drama to the entire area. Again, right there. I could do that because of the way that, that light direction is hitting the form. And I could do that right here. Kind of jumping ahead a whole bunch of steps, working on sort of the final touches here is what we're doing. So we normally wouldn't do that this early in the game, but we're just doing a short little demo here. Okay, let me add a little more red here just to shift that temperature, and then of course push that back. Now, what do you think all of this is doing to the lips? Adding red everywhere and adding more saturation in our color temperature. Well, what it's doing is it's muting the lips. It's making the lips look so much more dull and less intense than they were earlier. So it becomes necessary to go into the lips and really punch those up, a little bit more. Now, there is a color that I'm noticing in here, sort of a purplish color right back here on the lips. And so now is the time to do some of that to show more of that purple color in there. So this is purple red in Pablo. Great color to use. Another really good color to use over here in the skin tone would be cinnamon in Polychromos. Okay, we don't really have time to put a whole lot of that in there. Let's see, the purple. There was another one I was thinking, oh yeah. I also would start using my ultramarine violet, and I just use that on another project. So I'm going to grab it from there. Here we go. Ultramarine violet. Just add an interesting and different flavor to parts of this. Right in there. It was a really nice look and feel. Also, a good idea to put it in several other shadow areas. Such a great color. Right up here, we could add it right up there. So we don't have a whole lot of time to develop it the way that we want to in there, but it can start to just shift some of these areas over into a cooler direction is what it will do. Add it right in there as well. Okay. All right. So I think that's about as far as we will probably go here. Now that I'm looking at this a little bit more, I want to add a little more red right in there and help clarify that lip line just a little tiny bit. Something like that. All right. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of what is possible with the Grisaille approach. Even though we didn't get entirely through an entire project, we did do a mouth, and hopefully that was interesting. And I do want to show you what a project can look like by the time you're done or nearly done. There's a particular portrait I've been working on, and I'm almost done with it entirely. So I want to show you that. So here's that portrait that I was just talking about. This is done on the same kind of surface. This is pastel matte, and I mounted it on a board, a cradled board. So hopefully you can see this pretty well. And I use the same techniques that I was showing you here. Now we took a little more time, refined things a little bit more, still working on the hair a little bit, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what is possible with this technique. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you so much for watching. Any questions, please let me know. Take care and stay sharp. Bye-bye.